Hello guys, my name is Vasani. Welcome to yet another video. In this video, we're going to be touching on debugging, one of the most important skills you can have as a software engineer. And I do believe that this skill not only applies to software, but to general life. So let's say maybe you're looking to you live in your house and you want to lock your place and you realize you don't have your keys. What do you do next? You begin to figure out where your keys could be. Maybe you left them at the counter, in which case you go and check the counter. If they're not there at the counter, they could be at the couch. This is debugging in a sense. You are debugging your actions, your past actions, trying to figure out where your keys could be so that once you found them, you can then be able to lock your place. So debugging is a two-step process whereby the first thing is to locate the error. So we want to know where the error is coming from. Where is this issue coming from? And then once we found where the issue is coming from, the second thing is we begin to fix the issue. We want a certain output. And so now we want to know where the issue is coming from so that we can fix it, so that we get the output that we expect. So just to use the example from earlier, you want to know where your keys are, so that once you found them, you can lock your place and leave. Make sense? Okay, so there's a couple of tools that you can use to debug. The most basic tool that you can use to debug is print statements. So you can just put print statements in the code, see what the code is doing. And the minute you see something that's just wrong, then you can investigate that piece of code further to see if it's doing what it's supposed to do, or perhaps it's doing something else. Whatever the case may be, you now have a starting point. The second thing to do is to use the debugger. Now, the debugger is very, very painful. And I do believe that a lot of software engineers out there do not utilize the debugger fully. That tool is very, very, very important, very useful. Now you can put breakpoints in your code. Basically, breakpoints tell your IDE that when you get to this point in the code, take a break. Breakpoint, take a break, and then you can then control with your keyboard how you want your IDE to proceed. So do you want it to take one step forward, or do you want it to jump to the next breakpoint? So breakpoints are super helpful, and in that when they break, your IDE actually gets to show you the state of the program in execution. So if there are variables that have been defined, you get to see the values that those variables have at the point in which the program itself hits the breakpoint. I know it's a mouthful, but I'll get to show you that in the video today. We'll look at these two options. Now there is the third option of logging frameworks. So when you're working with big software, they implement some sort of logging whereby if you are debugging those softwares, you can go look at the logs, see what the logs are saying, and then if there's anything in the logs that does not make sense, you can investigate that further. So you now have a starting point. There's also unit tests. So you can write up some tests to test a piece of code to see if it's doing what it's supposed to do. So that's also a form of debugging. Is this code doing what I want it to do? What is this code doing exactly? So there's another option is Stackoverflow. So you can go in there and say, hey guys, I have a program here. This is the program, this is the code. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. And some other people will look at your code and they'll give you solutions. So that's another form of debugging. You've essentially put the responsibility of finding what's wrong with your code over to somebody else. And once they figure out what's wrong, they tell you, and you call it a day. There's also ChatGPT. You can go to ChatGPT, talk to the chatbot. It can really be super helpful. So there are a lot of tools that we have at our disposal that we can utilize to debug our programs, fix our errors, and move on with our lives. So in this video, we're going to be looking at two. So we're going to be looking at print statements and the debugger. these are ones that I think they're easy to get to. You know, the other stuff I'm pretty sure you already do, like Googling, checking YouTube, all that stuff. That's also a form of debugging. You're trying to figure out what's wrong. Okay, so I'm going to be opening up my IDE. Okay, so I'm going to be starting a class. So we're going to call this debugging example. So basically, this program, we're going to have a logical error. Okay, so this is our program. So basically our program asks you for a number. You can enter any number, and then it will give you the sum of integers from 1 up until the number you've entered. So there's clearly a logical error with this program. Can you see it? Look at the code. Do you see where the issue is? I hope you can see it. So the issue is with this condition. So it's supposed, instead of it being start less than num, it's actually supposed to be start less than equals to num. Because remember, we're giving the result from 1 up until the number. So we're giving the results from 1 until 5. So we're going to add those numbers in between and 5 itself. So let's just run this program. Okay, so we're going to say 1. So you see, saying the result is 0, which we know it's not true because we're starting from 1 until 1. Should be 1. Make sense? So let's fix this here. And then let's go with 1, 1. Make sense? So in this case, we know what the issue is, but let's assume we did not know where the issue was. So we were now going to engage in the process of debugging. So we start with print statements. So what exactly do we want to see? Well, I know in my case, if this was me, I want to see the value of start and the value of sum. So I want to see, okay, when start was 0, what was sum? When start was this, what was sum? So I'm going to say start. Okay, so this is the debugging process. So we'll enter 10. Okay, start is 1, sum is 0, start is 2, sum is 1. So clearly this is not right. So then I can see, oh, the condition is wrong. I can see it. So print statements. So another option, this is a small program. So a debugger might be overkill. But anyways, let me show you what a debugger can do. So you can just put a break statement here. Now, when it comes to running it, don't run the program. Don't click here. This will not hit the breakpoint. Instead, you click here, this icon which says debug program. So the debugging, so when you run it in debug mode, when it hits a breakpoint, it stops. But then when you run it in execution mode, it pays no attention to the breakpoints, which isn't what you want. You want to debug it, so we run it in debug mode. Make sense? Let's go. Okay, so enter number. We're going to enter 10. We hit our breakpoints. Now, we're able to, so this side, it shows us the state of execution at this point. So it shows us the args. Well, there's nothing here. The scanner. This is the scanner object. You can open it and see more stuff if you're into that. We're not into that. We see that num is 10, which makes sense. We enter 10. So then this is the keyboard here. So on my keyboard, there's a bunch of keys. So what I'm going for is the key F8. I want you to pay particular attention to what F8 does. So what F8 does is that it goes step by step. So when I press F8, which I'm going to do now, it went to the next slide. Now, there's another key, which is F9. So what F9 does is that it goes to the next breakpoint in the code. So currently on our code, there's no breakpoint following this one. So if I click F9 now, it's just going to reach the end of the program. It's just going to execute until the end. And then we're going to see the result. I'm going to do that now. F9. And now we're able to see the result is 45, which is not the case, which is not true. The result should be 55. I wanted to show you what F9 does. So let's put another breakpoint here. Run it again in debug mode. Okay, so it's 10. So we've reached the first breakpoint. Now we're going to press F9. It goes to the second breakpoint instead of going to the second line. So you see, so look at how now we're able to see when num is 10, stat is 3, and then we're able to see sum is 3. So this is what debugging does. So you can then next line see what the code is doing. Sum is 6, stat is 4, num is 10. Does this make sense? No, it doesn't. Something is clearly wrong. Okay, what's happening here? Or could be, we already know it's the condition, so we have it easy in this case. You may not know, in which case you need to think clearly about what is the code supposed to do. Compare that with what the code is actually doing. Find the discrepancy between the two, and that's your issue. And then find the solution, and you've completely debugged your program. In our case, we're just gonna do this, run it again, give 10, result is 55. So all is well. So we've completely debugged our program. Feels nice, doesn't it? I know. It feels very good. I like this actually. You know, when you debug, you feel good. You're excited. So this is what I wanted to show you. I just want to make a couple of things, just wrapping up the video. So you're gonna find that some bugs, they are very difficult to recreate. This is especially true when you're dealing with software that involves an end user. So I'll use the example of, say we were part of the developers at Facebook, and an end user reports a bug and you have to investigate it. It may be that you will not be possible to recreate the bug. Like, you'll do what the end user said they did, but the bug will not show in your case. So that can happen. When that happens, it's not your fault, and I want you to be aware of that. And just see if you can perhaps look at the code, look at the logic, see if what the logic is doing actually makes sense. If it does, then just call it a day. Talk to your supervisor and tell them, let them know about what's going on. Because another thing, you don't want to just spend like your whole lifetime just trying to recreate a bug that obviously you cannot recreate it. So there are some bugs that just are difficult to recreate, and that's okay, and I want you to know that. Another thing too that I wanted to mention here is that make use of the debugger. It's very, very helpful. It's very powerful. I did not cover the features of the debugger. I will make a separate video whereby we detail like the features of the debugger and how important and helpful it is when it comes to debugging. So this is what this video is about. Remember, debugging is a very, very important skill. It's a very important skill. If you don't know how to debug, I highly recommend you start learning how to debug. It's a system, and you need to learn how to debug. Thank you. This is the end of the video. If you like the video or you find it helpful, please consider subscribing. There'll be more videos dropping soon, so keep an eye out for that. Cheers.